So we've asked Dale to come here today and really impact us, to really challenge us, and to really give us a kickstart so we can make a difference in our lives. So here's the guy that had to replace G.L. Johnson. That's a tough job. Mr. Fresno, 45 years at People's Church. And boy, Dale, I want to tell you, you've done a fantastic job, and we're glad to have you in our community. He's a diehard Green Bay Packer fan, so when Davante Adams was drafted, he was happy. And great big hand for our good friend here, Dale Oquist.
People, great to see you today again. Thank you. I am honored to speak to you today. And I do stand before you as a person, and I say this with all truth and sincerity. It is of all people in this room, maybe me and my story. It's amazing that I'm a Christian today, because I grew up in church. My dad was on the board of our church for over 40 years. And although I saw integrity in his life, I did learn early on what it was like to practice the art of disassociation. On every Sunday morning, it was disassociation. I'd sit down with my parents in church, and then as they would play music that had that I had no interest in whatsoever, and listening to a person drone on about an issue that had no relevance to me, I practiced disassociation. And thanks to loving parents and the sovereignty of God, something happened where all of a sudden it clicked for me. The light went on. That I did not measure everything based upon the stories that I knew. That even though when you peeled back the tedium and the boredom and you saw corruption, that Jesus trumped all of that. A few ideas and words about the church and about us as leaders. The church, I mean people, not just the organization. The first is the word contradiction. Contradiction. Contradiction, it's two propositions that cannot simultaneously be true. We know that the gospel started in the Middle East, and then it moved to the Greco-Roman world, and then it spread to the Germanic world, and then it spread to Europe, and then to the United States eventually. And we took it, and we did with the gospel what no one else had ever done, and that is that we, with our resources, we took it and it spread around the world. But in the process, do you know that in church growth history, the church has grown continually, up until the 1950s. When we started to take and we brought all of our American ideas and we applied it to the gospel. Because remember, there is a shelf life to the gospel. Where was the gospel born? In the Middle East. How's the gospel doing there today? It moved to the Greco-Roman world. How's it doing there today? Maybe a little heartbeat, right? And we give it the heartbeat because of Vatican City. The Germanic world the Franco-Germanic world is doing a little bit better. Of course, the churches in that part of our world today, they average 75 people. They average 12 people on a Sunday with a 75-year-old pastor. And so now it's us, United States, us as in United States, U.S., us. Now it's United States. And it still has a heartbeat here, but we know that the church's influence is continually diminishing. Do we not? A contradiction. Because of the fact that we're saying one thing, we're speaking one thing, oh, grace, 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 love, 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 love. It's a contradiction. The second word is dilemma. Dilemma. It's when, and there's a dilemma for the church, and that is this. The dilemma for the church is that our heart is honestly, and I believe this, our heart is in the right spot, but we make no decisions to live out the desires of our heart, and that is to not only make disciples, but even to reach out and to to reach our city. So, that term, reach our city, we know what that means, to reach our city, so that one day every person in Fresno calls himself a Christian. Or every person has a chance. But there's a dilemma. And that is we haven't positioned ourselves to do that. Here's my point. Our heart is in the right spot, but there's nothing about our decisions and our positioning and our posturing that puts us in a place where we can reach out to them, whether as individuals, as individual people, or whether as churches, we're not doing anything to do that. That's a dilemma. So here's the last word, and this is the last word that gives us hope, and it doesn't sound like it's going to give us hope, but it gives us hope. Here's the word that brings hope, and I think that the word that needs to be associated with church is, so contradiction, dilemma, paradox. Paradox. It needs to be paradox is the word that needs to be associated with the church. Now, paradox. What is paradox? It's illogical, right? It doesn't fit. It's a revelatory surprise. I didn't see that coming. It's the paradox of the kingdom of God, right? If you want to be great, what do you have to do? You're going to have to serve. If you want to go to the front of the line, you got to go to the back of the line. It's all these paradoxes. And yet there's something kind of weird about it, but that people really like. And what would it be if the church was really a paradox? And that is that these people that we think are going to condemn us, that we think that if we walk into their doors, because you've heard this, I've heard this, if I walk into that church, I'm going to get struck by lightning. Right? But the paradox that says, I will not condemn you, but in that tight line of, I'm going to stand, I'm not going to compromise the truth of God, and yet I'm going to love you, not just, I hate this word. I hate this word. You know the word I'm going to use? Tolerate you. We're preaching tolerance, but the church should never preach tolerance. That means I'll put up with you. Did Jesus just put up with people? How would your wife have responded if she, when you did your vows, I vow to tolerate you? Now you've lived that out, but whatever else. It was the subscript, right? We're filming this? And the paradox of the church is that we embrace and that we love unexpectedly. Where we would react with condemnation, we react with love. That instead of defending ourselves, we serve. That instead of pointing a condemning finger, we open our arms to say, we're not perfect, but we sure want to make sure that whatever we do, the only thing we want to hate is hate. That's the only thing we want to hate. That's the only thing we want to hate. That we open our arms and we start to be what Jesus has called us to be, and that is a people of paradox.